has clearly accepted that Canada's energy sector isn't disappearing. Now the focus has shifted to billions of dollars flowing into carbon capture and emissions reduction. The question isn't whether oil has a future, it's why Ottawa is spending so much to secure it.
Well, Eddie, let's have a quick look at this. This can get technical fairly quickly, so we'll kind of just touch upon it because it's key as well coming out of the whole push for new pipelines from Alberta to Tidewater on the West Coast. And now last week we were talking about the pipeline that Premier Danielle Smith and Premiers Danielle Smith and Doug Ford announced from Alberta through to Sarnia, Ontario. And one of the main reasons they're pushing for a new pipeline through there is because the existing pipeline that does carry oil to the Sarnia refineries takes a little jag down in through the United States and then back up through to Canada to Sarnia. So the minute it crosses that border, we lose sovereign control over that oil flowing through. So this is a national security issue as far as I'm concerned, and it's related to sovereignty. So it's this whole thing's a trilateral agreement, which means that it establishes clear milestones. Shared transport infrastructure must operate by 2032, with the initial 6 MTPAs of CCS reductions finalized by January 1st, 2035. So the reduction in the carbon has to be at a certain level by January 1st, 2035. And this has been signed by governments, provincial and federal, and the major oil sands companies. So
it's the Oil Sands Alliance. Yep.
It is a full-on press here. So carrots and sticks tier regulation. Oil producers who meet their carbon targets will see their annual carbon pricing stringency rate cut from 2 to 1%. 2% to 1%. Failure to deliver hits them with a penalizing 1.5 to 2% annual tightening. So there's an incentive for them to reduce the carbon as far as the percentages are concerned. And then we get to the symbiotic production growth. I don't know how you can even put some of this into plain English. The agreement explicitly ties the viability of the Pathways CCS network to the success of expanded export infrastructure, acknowledging that environmental compliance is required to sustain Canadian oil production growth. Okay, so the environmentalists should be happy with this because they've got all of the major players signing on to this carbon reduction process and push. And in turn, they have the backing of the provincial and federal governments as well. And there are targets that are built in and incentives that are built in. That puts it into plain English as far as carbon capture is concerned, because once you get beyond just 2 or 3 quick lines in plain English of carbon capture, it goes downhill very quickly as to you're speaking another language. And I don't do that very well. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's one of those stumbling blocks that has irritated Alberta in trying to move its oil to new markets. And of course, getting new pipelines, and pipelines are moving forward, although there's still going to be pushback. It's still not quite as easy as what it first appeared to be, because I watched the Assembly of First Nations, the opening of the Assembly of First Nations the other day, and the Grand Chief in her speech, and she mentioned about pipelines and the fact that they have to be players in this.
Yeah.
And I get it. So we can't bypass them or bring them to the table after the fact. And that's been one of the biggest irritants with First Nations is, oh, you bring us in after the fact, for the, okay, we'll go along with this kind of approval. No, they want to be at the table from the get-go. And you know what? Rightly, they should. If it's crossing their land, they should be there. They're part of the process. So anyway, hopefully this will help them to get their voice moved forward another step, and that hopefully it's enough to keep the environmentalists happy, because again, oil's not going away tomorrow. You can try all you want, but it's not going to go away tomorrow. It's going to be with us for a very long time, so we might as well just get over it and work with it and around instead of trying to work around it. That's the way I see it. Your thoughts?
Mm-hmm. You know what, Gary? I like what Prime Minister Carney is doing in terms of Liberals 2.0. We talked about it in the past where Alberta has been pushed around and neglected by a multitude of governments over the last 30, 40 years, starting with Trudeau Sr., into some of the conservative governments, complete avoidance by Trudeau Jr., and rightly so. Britons were frustrated that their greatest resource was not being. I'm not going to use the word exploited, but they weren't able to get a fantastic product, a product that the world needs to market quick enough because of governmental regulations and restrictions and not having the proper pollution management control systems in place and whatnot. And it seems to me Carney has been in overdrive, and I don't think it's a question of appeasing Albertans. I think he's been in overdrive to accelerate the export of our high-end natural resources to the market. And in order to do so, you need the necessary infrastructures in place to be able to do so. We talked pipelines last week. We're talking about carbon capture projects being put into place here with heavy oil companies, and everybody's on board with this. We have the Premier of Alberta, working with the federal government to overcome shortcomings over the past 40 years. And you mentioned the environmentalists are involved in some of these discussions. The indigenous are going to be involved with these discussions moving forward. Where the cooperation between Ottawa, Alberta, and British Columbia. We can't leave Ebby out of this picture because he's also playing his part in getting product out to port. So I see this as a win for the entire country. I also see this as a win for Alberta and the naysayers in Alberta against continuing being part of the Canadian Federation, because it's always been about oil, and rightly so. Well, it's no longer becoming an impediment for Albertans to stay in the country, where you've got major multi-billion-dollar projects being committed to by the leaders of Western Canada plus Ottawa to get the bitumen out of Alberta and create incentives for oil companies through this environmental program for the carbon capture. It's a win-win-win all across the board, and I think this is just some fantastic work. Not just the Carney, but let's put credit where it's due. Danielle Smith as well, walking a high wire act, and at the same time being able to address the concerns of the Alberta constituents about Ottawa neglecting them for decades, where now we've got a plan in place where the neglect is no longer there. So what else have you got to complain about now? I'm taking that very cynical approach to it, but seriously speaking, Gary, so many things have been happening over the last 6 to 8 months pertaining to Alberta energy, and it's all been positive movement. And you know what, Gary? I'm really hopeful that this is an actual prelude at some point where Ottawa can turn their attention to Ontario and Quebec. Let's get some energy out of the province of Quebec and out to market to the East Coast. Let's get energy from Western Canada through Quebec and Ontario into the Atlantic and refine our oil and get it to market. And if we're going to call this a Team Canada approach, I think a great example of the Team Canada approach is what's been happening in Western Canada. I'm tickled pink about this. I'm really, really excited about this for everybody that's been concerned about Alberta oil. We're taking the environmental approach, creating incentives, working with the Oil Sands Alliance, which is huge in Alberta, working with the Alberta government, the British Columbia government to be able to bring our precious resource of oil quicker, faster, and more of it to market as quickly as possible, especially with what's going on in the Middle East. We got to continue becoming the world leader when it comes to energy.
Well, supporters are calling it nation building. Critics are calling it a corporate subsidy. Do you feel like this is a corporate subsidy, or do you feel it's just a program to kickstart things that addresses some of the concerns that have been raised by the critics as far as the environment is concerned?
Yeah, it's definitely the latter. Look, you know what? Economies do not thrive without corporations, managed corporations. So in order to incentivize corporations to go in a certain direction in terms of being able to sell Canada's resources, you've got to work with them. And I think this is an excellent opportunity for the provincial and federal government to work with the major corporations to be able to extract that valuable resource from Alberta's oil sands. And it's a win for corporation. It's a win for the province of Alberta, and it will be a win for Canada down the line in terms of further pushing us towards continuing to build ourselves as a resource powerhouse in the world. So to me, Gary, it looks like it's a win-win situation everywhere, all around.
I agree, Eddie. That.
What about you? What do you think?
I don't believe it's a corporate subsidy per se. I think it's an incentive, a program that's new. It's something that the can's been kicked down the road a number of times, and they have managed now to read the market, both the politicians and the corporate side, and they've all of a sudden realized that there is a real opportunity here, especially in the current situation we find ourselves in with the neighbors to the south, that we do have to strike out more on our own and build our own identity and strengthen our own identity even more so. So sometimes you need a gentle push, and if 1%, 2%, whatever is that push that's required, and you've got all of the big players on board without so much as a whimper, they're there, they're signed on, well, that's a major step forward for us. And it also means that for other countries that are looking to buy oil that's as environmentally friendly as can be, as far as from the time you pull it out and process it to you ship it, then we have a leg up there too. Because this is definitely going to make it, our whole process, more environmentally friendly compared to other areas that are selling oil. So that makes our oil even a more in demand at a point from an economic and environmental aspect.
Well,
so I think
environmental. Sorry, Gary.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, and you also look, I mean, you mentioned opportunity before. Look, I mean, this is allowing us to also come up with engineering solutions and become a leader in carbon capture sciences. This is something that Canadians or Canada can begin exporting to other petroleum producing countries and using some of the solutions we're coming up with. I mean, we talked about many times before on our show how innovative Canadian engineering is. All of this science for carbon capture, this is something we will become experts in. And expertise is something that's an exportable resource, Canadian know-how. So I think there's a fantastic opportunity again here for us to open up another industry in terms of the sciences of environmental carbon capture process. So there's another win, not just for the benefit of the environmentalists in our country, but globally.
And let's look at the economy and the number of jobs the tar sands, as they used to be called, the oil sands, have produced in this country for not only Albertans, but a number of workers from across the country. And I can tell you, like a lot of workers that had jobs originally on the offshore in Newfoundland and Labrador ended up going out west to Fort McMurray, and that became their lifestyle. And I can tell you, like from New Brunswick, there was an early morning flight from St. John to Toronto, 5 a.m. flight, and 95% of that flight, didn't matter what day, was full of Maritimers going back to work at Fort Mac, because they would work 2 or 3 weeks on and then be home for a couple of weeks and then go back. And that flight used to be full every morning at 5 o'clock heading to Toronto, and then they'd connect from Toronto through to Calgary and Calgary to Fort Mac. So a lot of money found its way back through right to the East Coast and gave people, young and old alike, the opportunity to work hard, work away from their families, and make good money. And they were making very good money. So the impact has been there all along, the economic impact, and this can only help to ensure that that impact, positive economic impact, will continue while addressing some of the issues around the environmental concerns. Now, on the screen, I do have like a graphic of how this carbon capture will work, and I'm not going to go into it because some people watching on a small screen will have a hard time seeing it. And it's there, and just below it is the website, the address for the website where this particular item came from, and it's has all of the information you could want as far as the carbon capture program is concerned. So I would advise you to, and hardly suggest that you take note of that website and freeze the screen for a minute, grab the website address, and go, and you'll see this, and it will explain how this all works, and you'll have a better understanding of it. Plus, you'll get a better idea of what it's all about overall. So that is that one, Eddie. And this isn't just about emissions. As we were saying a moment ago, it's about jobs, it's about investments, national unity, and Canada's economic competitiveness. So, what's our takeaway, Eddie?
Well, Gary, Ottawa may be investing as much in political stability as environmental technology.